Yeah.
All right.
Oh, can you go to the screen?
Oh, yeah, so you don't go blind.
Oh,
Is it okay if I take pictures while you speak?
sure. It's fine. What is it for?
Just for
Social
college
media.
back social media.
So I thought I'd talk for a few minutes and then we get into the conversation. That sound good?
Yeah.
It's a joy to be here with you guys. I've been out campaigning all day. We're now 92 days out from the primary. And I thought I'd talk to you a bit, just talk as fellow Democrats. I'm just giving you a typical stuff speech. Let me start with a bit sort of who I am and the challenge that we're facing right now. My name is Ben Jealous. We're national president of the NAACP, partner at Cape Work Capital. We invest in startup companies and make the world better. Civil rights leader, I'm a businessman. Means I really specialize in doing two things well. I pull people together to get big things done, and I manage things well. I've been a CEO, a nonprofit, a partner in a small business since I was 26 years old. As Democrats, we have a challenge in front of us. It's a state that's 2-to-1 Democrats to Republicans. And yet we have a Republican governor, because Democratic voters did not turn out. 2010, 125,000 more Democrats turned out to vote for the re-election of Martin O'Malley. They turned out in 2014. And Larry Hogan wins by 63,000 votes. There's no reason why he should be in office, but we didn't turn out. And we have to think about why is that, and how do we make sure that that doesn't happen this time. As an organizer, I plan back from the end that we're trying to achieve. And so we've been building a campaign to beat Hogan. Not just to win the primary, but to beat Hogan. A lot of the other campaigns, you look at, it's pretty clear they're just trying to win this primary. This is a big task. It's not a small task. How we get there is we literally have to build a bigger, more robust coalition than anybody thinks is possible. And that's what I've done my entire life. In 2013, I was named Maryland Year of the Year. So in 1 year, I led the successful effort to abolish the death penalty in Maryland, just a couple of years after the sitting governor had tried and not succeeded. I co-chaired the successful campaign to pass the DREAM Act, and I put organizers on the ground to help deliver the victory in marriage equality. They told us that any one of those was unlikely and all of them together was folly. That literally, remember where you are. You're south of Mason-Dixon. There's no way the hell this happens in 1 year. What did we do? We simply declared the motto of the Three Musketeers. It said all for one and one for all. We got people to stretch further. We got preachers to stretch further, got Republicans to stretch a little further, Catholic bishops and the like. And we got all those victories. Sometimes it meant some people just standing down and not opposing, other times it meant them stepping up and turning out. The way we're doing that in this campaign is we're building a bigger, more robust coalition than anybody else. We don't just have more Maryland donors than any other campaign. We have more low-dollar donors than every other campaign put together, including Larry Hogan's. We haven't just been endorsed by Bernie Sanders. I co-chaired his campaign. We've also been endorsed by Kamala Harris, by Cory Booker, and even by Eric Garcetti. And that's important because winning starts with us coming together as a party. And it means we have to raise enough money to beat the Koch brothers, who are totally behind Larry Hogan and the entire Republican machine. And don't start out with a massive advantage. But when people have given you $25 or $50 in a 7-way primary, and now it's a 9-way primary, I think I was told recently, but some other folks have come in, they'll give you multiples of that when you win. And when you have folks who are aspiring to be president, 4 of the Democratic hopefuls for 2020 back, it means you can raise money in every corner of this country and won't need to. But one of the things I'm most proud of is that this campaign, we are running first or second in every county in the state. Every corner of the state. Our support is geographically pretty even and demographically pretty even. And that's what it really takes. tell you a story about 2016, something that I learned, and then how we're putting that to work here. You know, it was somewhere in the spring of 2016, and I was traveling with Bernie Sanders. And I was doing what retired civil rights leaders are supposed to do, I guess, expected to do in presidential elections. I was going to all the black places. I was in South Carolina, I was in Chicago, I was in Detroit. And they said, Ben, you know, we're gonna need your help down in Missouri. And I should have taken note of the fact I didn't say Missouri. See, Missouri takes you to St. Louis or Kansas City, places I know well. Missouri takes you to the Ozarks. So the plane touches down, and I literally can't see a 3-story building anywhere in sight. And I say, where are we? And they say, Ben, you're in the Ozarks. And I said, cool, like the next stop's St. Louis, right? When y'all gonna be back to the plane? They said, no, we need you. I said, okay. So I hop in the car and we get to Southwest Missouri State University. You know, it looks a little like Chicago, it looks a little like Detroit because the fire marshal's there and there's 7,000 people locked out outside because we've hit the capacity about 5,000 inside. And that's about where it stops. You know, I get inside, I put my head through the curtain, and the greatest diversity I see is that 20% of the men are in deer hunting camouflage. And I look back at Bernie's campaign manager and I say, so who's bringing out Bernie tonight? And they say, Jeff says, you're bringing out Bernie tonight. I said, really? You think this crowd, these deer hunters, what they want to hear from is the president of the NAACP? And he says, yeah. I said, trust me. Well, my mom raised me to believe that the most important thing you can do every day is to step beyond your comfort zone. As a leader, you've got to do something that scares you every day and keep stepping beyond your comfort zone. And that night, I knew exactly where my comfort zone ended. It was at that curtain. I stepped out there, I gave my speech. And if I closed my eyes, I could have been in Detroit, I could have been in Chicago. The response was just that strong. But I was talking about the danger that was Donald Trump, and the fact that we need to take him seriously and build a movement to stop him, and put a Democratic president in office. And this crowd got that. I mean, they love their neighbors, but they're also a little scared of him too. They could see them turning to Trump so ferociously, so quickly. So I decided to do something that night you often don't do when you're traveling with Bernie Sanders. I stayed to listen to the speech again. Speech like the extended length version of Freebird. Everybody knows a line, they're going to yell it out if they've been drinking and won't be at the right time. But I wanted to listen to it the way that you listen to music. See, at a certain point, that speech becomes a platform. And I wanted to hear how each piece of that platform, folks responded. And as Bernie made his calls for making it easier to make things in America, again, big response. Medicare for all, big response. $15 minimum wage, big response. But I was getting more anxious, not more firm, because at a certain place he was going to call for the police to stop killing unarmed black women and black men. And if the response wasn't just as strong as it was in Detroit, as it was in Chicago, it was going to be a little off. In a way that you just can't afford to be off when you're in dead sprint to win a presidential office. And then Bernie made the call, and I held my breath. And the response was just as strong. I pushed my head back out from the curtain, and half those guys in deer hunting camouflage had jumped on their seats, were hollering, had their fists in the air. Pulled my head back through the curtain, and I just thought about, what did I just see? You know, I knew there were guys who were down for, white guys who were down for racial justice. My dad's one. Married my mom. They were both organizers in Baltimore in the 1960s. He was one of the few white guys who went to jail for protest to desegregate our downtown. Marrying my mom cost him his inheritance and most of his family. I never thought I'd see a critical mass in the Ozarks. And there they were. And I started thinking, you know, what just happened? And then it occurred to me, we're Democrats, and we're good at this thing called identity politics, and for good reason. None of us want to show up to an NAACP meeting the way Mitt Romney did when I was president. Pretending like racism doesn't exist. Crowd didn't hear the rest of what he had to say. No, No, we're going to pay attention to not just who we're talking to, Bill or Joe, but what community we're talking to, and make sure that we address their concerns in the beginning. So maybe they'll listen to the rest of what we have to say. And when it comes to this Rainbow Coalition, this grand alliance, this beloved community we call the Democratic Party, we do that for every group, except for a couple. Most obviously, we don't do it for working class white men, because you can't come to them talking about civil rights or the Equal Rights Amendment. I mean, they may care about it, but it's not their chief concern. Now, you've got to come and talk about leveling the playing field, making it easier to make things again, making it easier for them to feel like a man again. The factory disappeared, they're working at Walmart. The factory disappeared, they're working as a prison guard. And it's not the same. And they want to be able to really support their family like they used to be able to. And Bernie did that for half of them, just like we do that for every other group. And then he asked them to be an ally to somebody else. And they were ready to be an ally to somebody else. Here's a funny thing. I get back to West Baltimore, where my family's from. My mom grew up in the McCullough Homes housing projects and on Pulaski Street in Longwood, across the west side. And I'm talking to cousins of mine friends of mine who, they don't swing between voting for Democrats and voting for Republicans, as voters do places like the Ozarks. No, they swing between voting and not voting. And it occurs to me as I'm talking to them that they've been waiting for the same conversation too. When Bethlehem Steel it didn't just leave South Baltimore. It also abandoned West Baltimore and East Baltimore. And we have massively high rates of not just unemployment in places like West Baltimore, but underemployment and discouraged workers who don't even look for jobs and say they disappear from the sites. And yet they're right there. And they want to feel like a man again or a woman again too, be able to support their family and hold it together. In other words, the black community, my community, since Dr. King was assassinated or coming up on the eve of his assassination, the black upper middle class has quadrupled in size. The blacks in poverty haven't gone down one point. And who are they looking to for leadership? Who are they waiting for to step up? I would argue that it's us or it's no one. The Democratic Party is supposed to be the party of working people. The Democratic Party is the party of RFK and MLK and FDR and Shirley Chisholm and Barbara Mikulski, these men we know by 3 initials and these women who were transformative in their leadership. And they were about civil rights and about economic opportunity for everybody and also about ending poverty. And if it's not us, it's no one. Republicans won't do it. The Green Party will never get their act together. It's just us. And here's the thing. When Democrats show up as Democrats, we win. But it means that you have to have the courage to lead. It means that you have to have the courage to put whole solutions on the table, not half measures. And then organize people to get them through. And that's what I've done my whole life. And that's why I'm running for governor. I'm the only one out here with a plan to make sure that everybody in Maryland has health care. And it's not just because I'm some bleeding heart liberal. It's also because I'm a businessman who understands the costs have been going up double digits every year and choking our small businesses. And we've tried everything else for a quarter century since Bill Clinton first said that we needed to have a Western European style of health care in this country. And as Winston Churchill said, you can count on Americans to do the right thing after they've tried everything else. And we've tried everything else, and it's not working. I'm out here saying that we should legalize cannabis for adult use. Massive racial injustices in its enforcement, but also a driving cause of violence in Baltimore City. We asked a retired Baltimore police officer to go interview police commanders across the city about the violence in the city. He came back and said, there's 2 really interesting things. One was they couldn't agree on what exactly was going on in the last 2 or 3 years. The other is that they were all in agreement that half the killings in the last 10 years were one set of weed dealers enforcing on another set of weed dealers. Because when a drug is so easy to source, there's always a new set of entrepreneurs encroaching on your territory, and if it's not regulated by law, it's regulated by bullets. And I'm out here saying that we have to end the college debt crisis. And man, I got slammed by a fellow Democrat who's running in this race who calls himself a progressive, who I literally came out And we'll be rolling out this plan soon enough, and certainly well before the primary, but literally just came out and said, I agree with Bernie Sanders that our public universities should be tuition free. And he slammed me and said, it's irresponsible of Mr. Jealous to say that unless he's willing to tell us how you pay for it right now. I wasn't even allowed to have an opinion. Now, he didn't ask why. If he asked why, I would have said because my grandfather went to the University of Maryland School of Law in the late 1950s, and the third or fourth class of black students admitted. And it cost him $200 tuition. And by 1970, the tuition was $410. And if it kept up with inflation, it'd be $2,600. But it's actually over $31,000. If he asked me, I would have told him, I talked to the president of Penn State once and said, what's your biggest leadership challenge? He said, it's like Groundhog Day every year. Every year I go up to the state capitol, try to keep so much more money from going to the state pen, so just a little more can come to Penn State. Literally, for 2 generations now, as our states have spent more and more on higher and higher incarceration, they've spent less and less on public higher education. And as they've invested less in public higher education, what's going on? Tuition, student debt, student default rates. What's gone down? Your credit score. Can you default? What else also has gone down? Growth in American GDP, gross domestic product. Why? Number one reason, according to the Gallup Institution, why is American GDP growth 3-4%, 86 and 96, 2-3%, 96 to 2006, 1-2%, 2006 to 2016, headed towards negative? Why? Because every decade, fewer young Americans are starting new businesses. And college debt might have something to do with that. Everything we're about in this campaign is about expanding opportunity for your generation and every generation in the state. We know how to make Maryland stronger. We know how to make it so that the Maryland dream is even a little more powerful than the American dream. That's why my family moved here. My grandparents came up during the Great Depression from Southern Virginia. Granddad had to work the B&O Railroad. Grandma went to work for Planned Parenthood. Decade or so later, a couple decades later, he was a probation officer. He would be for 30 years. She was a social worker. State of Maryland invested in their public higher education, and they turned around and were able to pay for my mom to go to private college and me to go to a private college. As they were retiring there, they were at Dulles Airport watching me fly off to Oxford, England as a Rhodes Scholar. That's the way Maryland's supposed to work. That's the way Maryland has worked. That's the way Maryland can work. If we have the courage to come together and build a big, robust coalition across every line they say is supposed to keep us divided, race, gender, geography, rural, urban, whatever, religion, in the interest of ourselves and our children born and unborn, to get back to making sure that the gates to the Maryland dream are open to all of us. Thank you and God bless. I'm happy to take your questions.
So this might be too broad to really have a single answer on, but I know a lot of times it seems like a lot of emphasis in legislation is put on the Bay Area because that's where most people live, that's what the cities are. I want to know how people would say Western Maryland, like Washington County, the handle, know that they're not going to be forgotten.
Comes to this campaign, it's because we're there all the time. We've been to every county multiple times, and I'd say there's probably a solid 18 counties we've been to like several times. I was just out in Frederick. I've been to Frederick at least 10 times. I've been to Hagerstown probably 8 times. I'm going back to Cumberland for my 4th or 5th time. And the thing that you find, right? So if you're hanging out in Cumberland in the evening, say on a Friday or Thursday, every dysfunction you'll see in Black and West Baltimore, you'll see in White and Cumberland. Folks are hurting. We don't just have the most incarcerated Black or brown people on the planet. We also have the most incarcerated white people on the planet. And it shouldn't be much of a surprise. Americans are 5% of the world's people and 25% of the world's inmates. And what do they almost all have in common, like 90+% chance that they have in common? They were too poor to afford their own water. And so they come from places like Western Maryland, just like our military does. And there's a draft of the poor into the military, there's a draft of the poor into our prisons. And so you find that when you're there and you just talk to the kitchen table issues, to the opioid crisis. It's the first policy platform that I put out. To the need for health care, you're speaking to the voters. And yes, they want you to get into more regional issues like tourism and agriculture, and we're there. But we're at a moment when it's kind of obvious to people it's easy for somebody like Donald Trump to play a game of divide and conquer, pit people against each other and pick scapegoats this week and next week and whatever. But also there's a great opportunity as an organizer in that because everybody's feeling the same types of pain. So if you speak to those pains, education, health care, even mass incarceration, opioid addiction, you can draw lots of voters to the same movement across geographies. And then in a lot of those counties, healthcare is literally half of the economy in those counties. So if Obamacare goes away, they're worried about everything imploding. But if you actually get Medicare for all through at the state level, their economy would expand robustly. Yes, sir, and then you, so in the hat, and then the black t-shirt.
So I'm sure you know, there's a March for Life rally over the weekend. And,
Yeah.
Just recently, Maryland, had a shooting at a local high school. So during that March for Life, there was 5 proposals for students. But I just want to know if you would support that, and what more do you think should be done to make sure shootings don't happen?
Thank you for that question. I took the pledge on stage at the Baltimore March for Our Lives, and I marched the full route with them. Most of the other politicians checked out. Maybe it's just because I'm younger than most of them. I marched the whole route. And I gave a talk at the end, and I talked about my 2 family members that have been shot in Maryland in the last decade. One in Columbia, one in Prince George's County. Their families were in Baltimore, neither were in Baltimore. The one in Columbia was 18 years old. His name was Brian. He graduated from Wild Lake High School. It's called the Wild Lake Murder. And the other one opened up his door, thought to greet a stranger, and it turned out to be a drug dealer who was shooting him because he had agreed to testify against the drug dealers. One of the things I was really appreciative of in Baltimore was that people spoke to both kind of big types of terror. The terror of the shootings in our communities, and the terror of the shootings in our schools. And it's important that we keep both out there. We need to go further. We need to pass, in addition to things we pledged to, one of which was a red flag law. We need to pass that red flag law, make it easier to take guns out of the hands of people who are known to be a danger to themselves or to others. Absolutely. We've had a police officer killed in Prince George's County trying to protect a woman from her estranged husband. That happened just a couple of weeks after a couple, a murder-suicide. The wife had said that my estranged husband has guns, he's a danger to himself, he's a danger to me. They said, yeah, but you just have a temporary restraining order. Wait until you get a permanent, then we'll take his guns away. She's no longer alive in that scene. My son's kindergarten has been on lockdown in the last few weeks. My daughter's junior high school has been on lockdown because at a high school in the same county they found a young man with a gun that went to his house, he had an AR-15 and multiple hand grenades. We've got to make it harder to get weapons of war in America. There's too many loopholes, too easy to enter the internet, too easy to import them from other states. And when I'm governor, we'll set a task force in the state police to shut down the trade of illegal guns on our highways. Other questions?
How would you tackle environmental issues like cleaning up the bay and transforming Maryland's electricity grid to more renewables?
When I'm governor, we will make making Maryland 100% reliant on clean, renewable energy our moonshot. And we will make that even more meaningful to Maryland by building the technology. We can open up factories in places like Cumberland, in West Baltimore, and Salisbury to build turbines, or turbines further inland, build the blades on the shore. Places where new factories haven't been open for generations. Go out to Cumberland and you'll see a prison that stands on the ground of the factory. You go out to Salisbury and you talk to the corrections officers and they'll tell you they used to work in a coal factory. one way or the other, we built the factories out of the, we built the prisons out of the factories. 65% of our clean energy production in Maryland will ultimately come from offshore wind. So we've got to get rid of Andy Harris out there on the Eastern Shore and stop his blocking of the wind projects. We've got to go full tilt. And we'll do it in a way similar to what Louisiana did after Katrina. They partnered with Northern European companies to build a coastal restoration industry for the entire region. And we'll partner, in many instances, probably with Northern European companies, to build a turbine industry for the entire region. Because if we get there first, others will have to source from us. Wayne Gretzky said he was a great hockey player because he skated to where the puck was going. The puck on energy production is only headed towards clean and renewable. The faster we get there, the better for our economy. As far as cleaning up the bay, I'll sign on to the Paris Accord, and I'll pull the governors of the half dozen states that rely on the bay for their economy together to make sure that the clean up the bay continues even if Washington defunds it. It's about $100 million a year. We can do it, across multiple states.
Late last year in Montgomery County, there was an immigrant student two immigrant students, I believe, who raped a young girl. How do you plan on fixing the immigration issue, and would you support making Maryland a sanctuary state?
I would absolutely support making Maryland a sanctuary state. It's called the Trust Act. Anybody know where the sanctuary state conversation started?
California?
Yeah, where? Take a guess. Oh. Los Angeles. Anybody remember who? Learn about this? Maybe remember Rodney King case? You guys remember the Rodney King case? It's like the first police beating of black men for no good reason, caught on videotape, showed over and over and over again in the year of 25 years. And that made a certain police chief infamous, very conservative police chief, embracing very abusive tactics, named Daryl Gates. And like a broken clock, Daryl Gates was right once. And like the Republicans do so many times, they support something good and then they later try to destroy it, whether it's the EPA or affirmative action, both of which were put into place by Richard Nixon. So Daryl Gates was the first major city police chief approached by immigration, then called INS, now called ICE, to have his officers deputized as immigration agents. And he says, "Thank you, I'm honored, but no." And I said, "Well, why not?" And he says, "Because we have one job as LAPD, it's to make people safer. And the moment that we become immigration officers, we'll have two. And when we have two jobs and we're supposed to have one job, guess what? It means we're distracted. And when we're distracted, everybody becomes less safe. So then a few other things will happen that will make us less safe. And the immigrants will stop talking to us. Not some of them, like all of them. Not the ones just without papers, like all of them. And then we'll become less safe. It says, and then immigrant networks, cartels, will begin especially targeting those communities to enrich the cartel at their expense, knowing that they won't talk to the police. And we'll all become less safe. So thank you, but no. Tonight, in Maryland, somewhere in Maryland, in Frederick County, for instance, all those things are happening. My daughter goes to a public junior high school where MS-13 is active on campus. Where MS-13 is active on campus, where little girls talk about other girls who've been forced into the sex trade. As governor, I'll do everything I can to weaken the cartels. And one of those is to make sure that no immigrant is afraid to talk to the police. Because we've got to take down the cartels. And one of those will also be to legalize cannabis, because every time that we legalize cannabis in the state, guess what happens? Violence goes down in the major cities in that state, and violence goes down on the border. Because the cartels are so involved in the importation of cannabis. And when you take money out of the pockets of the cartels, it gets harder for them to sustain their other activities, like sex trafficking. So yeah, I'll support the trust. Yep.
Ben Jones' governorship, what is the first thing that you do when you get to Annapolis?
We'll present a budget 3 days after I get it. I mean, day one, I'll zero out Larry Hogan's voucher program. But we'll present a budget that fully funds public education in our state. You know, there's been a lot of theories for how to improve education, but none of them actually work well until it's actually fully funded. You gotta make sure the money's managed well. I know a lot about that too. But we're currently, our state, under Larry Hogan, underfunds public education, starting K through 12, $2 billion a year. And it has a real impact. And that means we're gonna make some tough decisions. First thing we'll do is we'll make sure that our casino money and the lottery revenue, right now we're hoping everything goes through on the casino money, but we also have to get to the lottery money. Those were promises made to the voters, and that's about $800 million a year that will be spent on public education. Those promises have been broken. We'll make sure those are kept. And then we'll put, need be, new revenue sources on the table, like the legalizing cannabis, or for instance, making sure that a hedge fund manager has to pay a higher effective tax rate than his secretary, or closing corporate loopholes on the table. Very targeted increases in revenue that most voters will support. And we will eventually, I'm sure, have to make some tough decisions about the budget. But I'm willing to stake my political future on fully funding education in Maryland. See, when you're an executive, you guys, many of you will get the chance to be the executive of something in your life. When you trade as an executive in politics, your incentives are always misaligned. You know? You're told, oh, if you make a tough decision about the budget, you could lose your job, so don't go do that. You just kick the can down the road, you avoid the decision. When you're trained as an executive in the real world, trained as a CEO in the real world, I was not much older than you, I was 26. You're taught, no, you best make that hard decision about the budget with love, because if you don't, you could lose everything, like everybody else's job, not just yours. Everything. And so you learn how to do it. And frankly, if we don't, then the kids lose everything. Today, and our economy suffers tomorrow. So we'll make it, and we'll focus on it. It'll be a big fight, and I'll be asking all of you to help us win.
Would you be willing to consider reforming Maryland prisons to be more like the Scandinavian model? I know that North Dakota is trying to move away from punishment in prison and more towards rehabilitation, because ultimately if you want to come back and be our neighbor, be a
85%.
citizen,
Yep.
right? We have a very high reconviction rate, like you see it 85%?
Yeah.
Go back to prison? Like
No. See, 85% come home.
Okay, yeah.
85% come home. The other 50% died.
Come home, but a lot of them end up right back in prison because they weren't taught in prison how to be out of prison.
Or how to read.
So how do you
yes,
rehabilitate the prison system?
I've spent my entire adult life in the criminal justice reform movement. I started out as an intern at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund in college, opening inmate bail. That's how I got started. And I'm fully committed to shrinking our prison system while getting more dangerous people off the streets and into it. So we used incarceration as a panacea for everything from drug addiction to homelessness to mental illness. And we got to change that. When I was president of the NAACP, I partnered with the governor of Georgia, Nathan Deal, Tea Party Republican, to shrink their prison system. When I rolled out our criminal justice agenda, I had every civil rights leader you've ever heard of, and many you haven't, and Grover Norquist and Newt Gingrich's spokesperson, and the head of the largest prison guards union, corrections officers union in the country. Because that's what it takes in a democracy to build a winning coalition in tough states like Georgia, but we did it. And Georgia now has shrunk its prison population by 125%. We did the same thing in Texas, although with activists, not with the governor, but he signed 50 of the 52 bills that we passed. Same thing, down 125%. Maryland, our big goal, shrink it by 5% in 10 years. WTF, when was Maryland supposed to lag behind Georgia in anything good, let alone Texas? But that's what politics as usual when Maryland gets you. And the reality is, you know, General Colin Powell said to me a long time ago, right around the time I became president of the NAACP, he said, Ben, figuring out when you disagree with people on is easy. figuring out the one thing you can agree on is harder and yet more important. And so even with the Tea Party, who we fought on everything, I'm pretty sure there's still like mock wanted posters they made with my face after a certain incident. We found one thing we could agree on, which is we needed to shrink our prisons. And then we got it done in Georgia Tech faster than anybody's ever done in Maryland. When I'm governor, we'll take care of that. Has anybody here seen Michael Moore's movie, Who to Invade Next? Yeah, so one of the great moments of that is they say to these like Scandinavian prison guards, where'd you all get your crazy ideas? And oh, you know, like ancient American peniological textbooks from the 1970s. Like the ideas over there started here. And we gotta get back to the best ideas we can, get away from the worst ones. They all do come on.
So after the redistricting plan in Pennsylvania for the 2018 election, do you have an updated plan for what would happen in Maryland and what would that plan be?
And ultimately, I believe that we need to have nonpartisan commissions, but we need to do it as a compact with other states. You know, I don't believe in sort of like unilateral disarmament. You know, like for instance, we get a pact with us in Virginia, I'd be very excited. And I think that might be possible. So, man, I'm going to try to go to folks who haven't asked.
Besides decriminalizing cannabis or legalizing cannabis,
Yeah.
what are some other positions you would take to end or diminish the war on drugs? And also, would you consider releasing nonviolent drug offenders in prison?
Oh, yeah, certainly if we legalize cannabis, it'll be retroactive. Multiple. I believe that there should be a safe place in each city for heroin addicts to take their drug. I lived on site, managing a harm reduction housing unit in New York City when I was young, just back from grad school. The way that they punish multiply addicted people with HIV, particularly heroin addicted people with HIV, is they stop them. They don't kill them. Because when your immune system's low, and they cause internal bleedings, then secondary infections are so painful, it's a fate worse than death. Kurt Schmoke was right a generation ago. It cost him his political career when he said that we needed to make clean needles available to stem the flow of HIV, the spread of it. And we have a lot of black women dying now is a term that came the edge of the disease, edge of the virus, dying as a result. And so we'll make sure that people can get access to clean needles. The most important thing, though, we can do in the war on drugs is move beyond the failed broken window strategy of policing, which says focus on the small things. Somehow you'll prevent the big things. You know what's suffered as a result? Our ability to solve murders. Our ability to even open up a rape kit. It's a scandal. Maryland, thousands of unopened rape kits. I'm governor, will make sure that all of them are opened. We go after every rapist. And then we build robust homicide units to go after a murderer. But we'll get out of the business of harassing young people about, do you have a joint in your pocket? And we'll generally tell our officers, yeah, when you've solved all the homicides, you've solved all the rapes, you've solved all the home invasions, feel free to go after smaller infractions. My granddad was on law enforcement in Baltimore for 3 decades. If he was here, he would tell you what he told me. He was in the process of inspiring me to study criminology. I studied criminology at the Institute of Criminology at Oxford University. To do my groundwork, and I teach criminal justice policy at Princeton at the Woodrow Wilson School. If any of you are thinking about doing a master's in public administration, make sure you apply to Princeton. It's free. $700 million down to 200 students. Take advantage of it. But it's only a couple hours. But he would say to me, law enforcement is like anything else. If you do one thing, you can't do something else. So if you're focused on, I'll give you an example of like how broken windows works at its worst. New York City, 6 years ago, there was an official editorial from the New York Times about a police officer who was going down the street with a wanted poster for a rape suspect. He came up to 4 young ladies, I believe they were Afro-Latino, Dominican, Puerto Rican, and he said, have you seen this man? And they said no. And then he frisked each of them to see if they had a joint in their pocket. Well, the moment you're frisking somebody to see if they have a joint in their pocket, you've officially stopped looking for the rapist. That's the impact of the federal war on drugs. on our ability to catch serious criminals. Any other questions?
Recently, Amazon added Montgomery County and Washington DC to one of its finalists for building a tech company. However, they've come under fire for like a lot of its workplace practices.
Yeah.
If they do end up choosing Montgomery County, Maryland, would you support that, or would you vote it?
Larry Hogan's engaged in the dumbest, most desperate kind of negotiation I've seen in a long time. He ran for office saying he was going to keep our Fortune 500 companies here. We only have 4. He's already lost 1. So he really is eager, to get back to 4. And he's also a land developer, stands to gain a lot of money if housing prices skyrocket here the way that they have in Seattle and Washington State. As governor, I would never, with something as big as Amazon HQ2, be negotiating against DC over Virginia. I would insist that we all get together and put one proposal on the table. Because as it stands right now, Jeff Bezos, the world's richest man, we give him $5 billion, or the alternative blank check that the Hogan administration has discussed, will benefit a lot. And Larry Hogan, as a land developer, stands to benefit too. And then the 2 states that will benefit most, or jurisdictions, will be whichever 2 don't have to write the check. Because if you're in Montgomery County, people will be living in DC, improving your tax base, and they'll be living in Northern Virginia too. But we'll be footing the bill for years, and economists say there's no way to make it up. It's like the worst stadium deal you've ever heard of. So, now I mentor, I run the only Baltimore seed station investment office owned by a Silicon Valley investment company. And I mentor startups at Johns Hopkins Accelerator. And we lose startups every day. And we can never afford to lose sight of the fact that Amazon started out in a room no bigger than this, less than a generation ago. When I'm governor, we will never lose sight of the fact that our startups must be kept in the state. And we'll focus on that. We'll bring Maryland back to being number 3 in the country in health sciences and biotech, for instance. And when we do that, you'll see investors from all over the country coming here because we're top 3. And they'll stay to look at ed tech companies and financial services technology companies and all sorts of other startups because they have to come here for health, and you got other good companies will look at those too. Yes, sir.
What is your plan to make universities tuition free?
Well, we're not going to roll it out for a little bit, so I don't want to steal the thunder. I've got my communications and policy team in the back right now. And they're working really hard on it. But I'll tell you sort of the outline that I've discussed publicly before. We'll start where Baltimore City has started, and Baltimore County is kind of moving towards right now, which is to make our community colleges free. We'll then go to where, this will be done at multiple stages over time, we'll then go to probably something similar to what New York State is doing, essentially raising eligibility for the Pell Grant. And then we'll reverse engineer what's happened over the last 2 decades. We'll tie money saved from shrinking our prison system to money spent into our public university system. And I think the final proposal will probably even find some Republicans to support. So that's what it's just real. So I was talking earlier about that progressive. I actually didn't finish the story. So he, so irresponsible for Mr. Jealous to say that universities should all be tuition free again. And I said to him, I said, you know what really offended me most? And he said, what? I said, a few weeks ago, Larry Hogan came out and called for a return to truth and sentencing. Failed, ridiculously expensive war on drug strategy. Every study has said it has not made us any safer. It just ties the hands of judges, and we have spending way more to incarcerate people than the judges think we need for much longer than they think that they need to incarcerate people. And you didn't say a word about how is Larry Hogan going to pay. When it comes to locking up more of our young people, these young people, let's be clear, there's 2 total institutions in our state full of 18 to 35-year-olds. One is public universities, the other is prisons. When it comes to locking up our young people, they never ask the price. When it comes to educating more of our young people, they always ask the price. Turns out that we love our young people a lot, And there's one thing that trumps our love for our young people, because when you say our in any community, black, white, brown, Asian, Native American, our kids are always headed to college. It's our fear of somebody else's kids. We gotta get our priorities straight. We gotta invest in our love for our own kids. And part of that means investing in our love for the ones who are behind bars, making sure that they come out of prison more literate than they went in. They say in some prisons, 75% of the inmates are too illiterate to read a McDonald's menu. Well, if you can't read the menu, you can't work there. If you can't work at McDonald's, you probably have to prison. And think about it. You're in there for 5 years and you don't come out and be able to read a one word. It's ridiculous. Okay, I'm happy. Is there anybody else who hasn't asked a question? Anybody? No? Okay. All right.
Would your higher education plan involve room for trade schools?
Yes, and the K through 12 plan. We gotta make sure everybody comes out of high school ready for a career, not just for college. Young people are smart. Like, if you tell everybody, oh, the reason you go to high school is to go to college, and most kids know they're not headed to college, they can reverse engineer that and say, well, why do I need to be here? But we gotta ultimately move career education into our high schools, have apprenticeship programs. From high school into being a first responder, from high school into being a teacher, from high school into the trades, into nursing. And we will. Before I step down as governor, we will. And before I finish my second term, we will. And then we have to push those conversations into junior high school and in as low as the 3rd grade. Years ago, I was involved in a project helping NASA build a bigger pipeline of black astronauts back when we had astronauts. And what we figured out is that if young people didn't have the idea in their head by the 4th grade, they weren't going to be an astronaut. It's the same thing with plumbing or anything else. When I meet these young men, sometimes back from the military, sometimes back from prison, sometimes just in from a tough life, who are like in a sheet metal apprenticeship program. They feel like they found some like ancient secret. It shouldn't be that hard. Ancient secret being a place where you can get a raise every 6 months and ultimately get a career and ultimately have a pension and know how you're going to send your kids to college. Like the average age of many of these trades is around 60. They need young people, and yet we don't advertise them to young people in any way. We should be doing that. And we'll start by doing that in the actual schools. Thank you very much. It's been an honor to be here. Let me just, real quick advertisement.